Hi everybody, thanks for attending my Distributed Intelligence workshop. Today we're going to talk about how to build modern external BI solutions so good your customers won't believe they're not custom, right? Meaning, how do you build or integrate Domo without people even knowing you're integrating Domo? My name is Michael Cohen. I'm the Chief Architect here at Emocha Mobile Health. I've been working as a developer now for about 15 years. It feels like even more with the amount of time spent playing around with computers down in my parents' basement. But more recently, I was the lead developer and advisor to early stage startups specializing in medical software at Johns Hopkins Technology Innovation Center at Johns Hopkins University. And before that, I previously had founded a password management company and acted as the CTO. So let me tell you a little bit about my company, Emocha Mobile Health. We're a digital medication adherence company. And what we do is we pair video technology with human engagement. And we do this by leveraging the CDC endorsed video directly observed therapy model, which is kind of the gold standard for adherence, and actually started with tuberculosis. And we've been able to scale through asynchronous video DOT. Let me explain a little bit about what that is, right? So what we do is we have a mobile application where each day a patient will take their medication and actually record themselves taking their medication. So they'll take metformin, canagliflozin, and I'm totally butchering these words, and empagliflozin, right? So they take these daily. So they'll take a video of themselves doing that. And then an adherence coach within a few hours will go ahead and review that video and then engage through either like a video back message, which is like a video message, or a canned message, or even a personalized response based on what's happening that day. And we've actually been able to work with lots of different areas, lots of populations. So we've worked with behavioral health, asthma for educational purposes, and diabetes, as well as infectious diseases, which is where we actually got started with tuberculosis. We've also delved into organ transplant with liver and kidney transplant. So we're currently live in a lot of different areas. And we've actually been validated by most of our customers. So in tuberculosis, we have a 95% adherence rate, hepatitis 98, asthma 92, and diabetes 86. And these are all through either NIH or public funded research or through research that we work with our customers on. And we're in a lot of different areas, right? So we're across the public health sphere in Texas, Columbus, Tennessee. As far as health plans, we're in University of Maryland health partners and priority partners. And then employers, we're actually working with the whole city of Baltimore, as well as Warby Parker and Evercore, which is, and Evercore is actually a school. For health systems, we work with Johns Hopkins, LifeBridge, Indiana, and University of Miami. And then we also are in the life sciences and clinical trial space. And we work with the University of Washington, Boston University, Hopkins, Harvard, Yale, etc. But for all of these different customers, and we range across a lot of different areas, we have everybody wants their own view into the data. Right? So we have care providers, right? So those are nurses and primary care providers, or health departments and researchers, and they want to know what the patient outcomes are, right? How is their patient doing today, or what's happened? For CDC and other government agencies, they need to adhere to specific regulations. So they're interested in compliance, like how are they doing in compliance, and they need to specific reporting in that area. Then we also have a lot of areas, especially with tuberculosis. They want to focus on outreach, and so we help them automate things that can be automated. So it's kind of like an operations improvement area. And then more recently with COVID, we actually help people get back to work or school through green and yellow badges. So this is kind of like a transactional transactionally. So everybody has all these views into the data, and so we started with a Domo implementation. We got all of our connectors together, and we connected to our databases. We pulled in everything and started converting it to our Domo dashboards and stories and cards, etc. And we're moving like super fast. And we're able to do this with this SSO for Google, so everyone that needs to can get in there and start building what they need to build. Everyone's really happy with it. We're able to convert our current reports as well as new dashboards and reports that we didn't even have before. And our communications and marketing team is super happy. They're able to build material. Our CEO can raise money with ease, right? Because he has real live data to back up his claims. And then sales has all the KPIs they could possibly need, right? Out the wazoo. So everyone's really happy internally. But how do we present this to our paying customers, right? So we know how to present this to our internal customers, but we're not sure how to make our external customers or paying customers actually access these data sets. And the other thing is we have to think about this across the spectrum, because we have groups from HIV, opioid use disorder, tuberculosis to COVID-19, and they're all looking for data sets. And we're going to focus on COVID-19 specifically today. So we're going to kind of go through their workflow, because that was our motivator for moving into Domo. So also for our overview today, we're going to kind of go through this problem we kind of just addressed, the paths that we could potentially take, the solution, what we chose, and I'm going to leave you with some takeaways. We, of course, chose to embed for our paying customers, not to spoil the surprise, so that we could have our perfect layout and view into the data and really control the user experience and make it a cohesive experience for our customers. So to reiterate the problem, right? So how do we make our amazing dashboards available to our customers? So we wanted a unique experience that was cohesive in our application and you couldn't even tell you weren't within our app. We wanted to make it so we wouldn't actually change how our BI and professional builds dashboards. So we wanted to make sure he could still build dashboards really quickly and do it quickly and fast with minimal to no developer assistance. And we had to satisfy health insurance portability and accountability, or HIPAA compliance. So we wanted to make sure those are all kind of checked off. And in the area for COVID, let's talk about specific return to work and return to school customers. So we have businesses, and in businesses there's managers who want their employees to come back to work and they want to do it safely. For schools, we have administrators and they want their teachers and students to come back into the office or back to school safely. We did this through our application. And so our application provides a survey. And so where they ask, are you symptomatic or asymptomatic? Have you been exposed to somebody else with COVID, right? Have you had a positive COVID test? Do you have a temperature? Have you been on site today? Once we answer all these questions, we come to the solution. Do you have a green or yellow badge? And can you come back into the office safely or not? And so we have this big problem and we need it live as soon as possible, right? So we need to get these users up and running fast. And we already have signed customers with go live dates. Our current tool that we're using for analytics actually has a license that expires really soon, so we have to hit this deadline. And remember, this is a completely new market segment for us. And they needed these dashboards to be operational. And we're also a very small company, right? So our CEO is on our case, and this is a big market segment that we can't fail on. So this is actually I'm on a Zoom call with my product manager, and we're both freaking out. I'm sure you can tell he's going crazy right here. And we're trying to think, what can we do? How can we solve this problem? And what solutions do we have with Domo? So I'm going to take you through some of the paths that we were looking at and how we finally got to our solution now. So we have that Domo hosted versus embedded solution. And in both these scenarios, right, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, how are we going to handle our Domo instance? Do we want one or two instances? And you have to think about what features you potentially would need. You need to think about login. Right, so we have SSO through Google for our internal customers, and that was working fantastic. But how about our paying customers? So whether we're going to work with OpenID Connect or another internal solution. And then authorization, right? So you think about either PDP rules or programmatic filtering custom development. And I'm going to talk about programmatic filtering a little later, so we'll jump into that in a bit. Also, dashboard design, right? So dashboard design was huge for us. We didn't want to slow down our process of building dashboards whatsoever. We wanted people to be able to continue to build quickly and fast and iterate, especially as lots of our customers request different statistics that we don't already have available. And then experience, right? So we want to make this part of our application, make it very cohesive and work easily, and not so that our customers don't know that they're launching a new application or anything like that. So let's just talk about each of those more individually. So one is, what path do we want to take here? So Domo hosted or embedded. Internal made perfect sense to go the embedded route, right? It was working perfectly. For external, we really don't know. And this is the question we really need to ask ourselves. And so that first question was, what Domo instances do we need? One thing we found is that our internal customers needed different features than our external customers. For internally, we wanted to be able to alert people when different issues potentially arise, and we wanted them to be able to customize each card. For external customers, we're really just worried about branding and making it look just right for them. Then we have authentication. So with authentication for internally, Google SSO was really easy. We could log in and get into Domo without any problems. But for external, there are kind of two paths we could potentially take. With Domo hosted, we could do the SSO OpenID Connect. And the nice part here is you can actually integrate with a third-party identity provider if you need to streamline that process. Or we could go the embedded route and just use our existing emocha login without any changes whatsoever. Right, so that's very enticing. The other question was authorization. Right, so Authorization is, what can you see? And personalized data permissions is what you would do if you were doing it Domo hosted, or PDP rules. If you're going the embedded route, the next part is us at emocha, we already have our roles-based permissions. So we already do this in our system. And so we could pair this with programmatic filtering and the Domo Everywhere configurations to actually get exactly what we want. But no matter what we choose, we have to make sure we're filtering data per customer, right? So Philadelphia can't see Baltimore data and Baltimore can't see Philly data. We wanted to limit dashboard access. Certain people can only see dashboards that make sense for them. And then user attribute filtering was the last thing, right? So where users potentially, you only want to filter by department, location, city, etc. Also, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, right, or HIPAA. So this is something that's really important to us since we're a healthcare company. And so this act basically protects our customers, specifically the patients. So their PHI or patient health information was protected, and so it has to be audited whenever anybody touches it. The next part is with Domo, we can actually use the Domo auditing module, and you can easily audit anything, right? So you can check when someone accesses a dashboard and the time. Or if you're going the embedded route, we actually already have an audit module within emocha, so we could actually take advantage of that without any changes at all on our side. So, right, so you want to audit dashboard access either way. You want to limit access to a smallest group of people, right? So nobody's accessing it unless they need to. And the last thing you kind of have to think about is whether you're going to let people export data from your system or not. And so you can turn that on and off potentially per dashboard. And experience. So this is probably the biggest kicker for us and why we chose to embed our application. We could control everything. We could control whether we want to show analytics on a population level, or we could have our analytics or our specific dashboards embedded on a specific patient page. Also, we don't have to worry about our customers logging into Domo. Even though it has a great interface, it's not what we can't control everything there, and so it could potentially involve more trainings, etc. So with all these different questions, right? So we're thinking through these different stuff, and we're not really sure what are we going to do. So what was the solution we took? What decision did we make? And we chose for internal, we chose to go Domo hosted, right? Continue with Google SSL, so everyone can log in really easily. Also, our internal customers have to look at data across lots of our customers, so they can do that without any problems. And we have a lot of power users, so they could create their own dashboards or build new cards for whatever they might need. For external customers or paying customers, embedded make the most sense. We could completely control the user experience, and we could use our existing login page without any changes, right? And also tweak our roles and permission structure just so slightly and don't have to duplicate any of that information in Domo, whether manually or automatically. Also, we could use our existing audit trail, so that streamlined things and made the right choice for us, or made it to be the right choice for us. And also, when you're working with Domo, if you're creating users in Domo, you have to make sure that they only see specific dashboards. Everything's in Domo. If you potentially open up something inadvertently, it could be disastrous. So this also helped us to mitigate that risk and prevent them from ever seeing that or having that issue. And prevented us, of course, from having to deal with all those PDP policies that we would have to build. How do we actually do this, right? How do we go about embedding dashboards? And this is where Domo Everywhere becomes so powerful, right? We can embed our dashboards wherever we want, and it makes life really easy. So how do we actually do this? So if we look at it from a high level, first, a care team member or user will log into our system and select a dashboard they want to view. When we do that, we'll actually post to our emocha GraphQL API to the dashboard embed mutation. And in there, we'll actually say, okay, this user, what programmatic filters should they have? What should they have access to? Do that logic there, and then do a post to the Domo API, their embed story token API, where they'll take all these filters and permissions in a specific dashboard and actually return to us an auth token that we then will pass back to the browser. And in our iframe, we'll then use that to embed a specific dashboard to be displayed for the user. So what is that looking for the user? From their perspective, they're going to just see the login page. They're going to select a dashboard of interest. For us, we use React, so we're going to make an API call to get that embed token, handle it through our programmatic filtering, and passing that from our API to Domo, and then returning back to our iframe an embed token that we can then use to actually embed our dashboard into the page. And so our user can actually see the dashboard. With Domo Everywhere, to start, what you would do is you find the dashboard of interest. So here we're going to go and we can find the dashboard we want to embed. And we click this little share icon, and in there they have an embed dashboard button. And when you get to that, you'll see this pop-up where you can select all the things you potentially will need. What we can focus on here is you need to determine whether you want to do private, which would require auth, which is what we're going to kind of focus on here today. But you can also publicly embed this. So if you don't care who can see this, you can make this public and show it on your site publicly. Also, one thing you can do is you can either embed dashboards or stories, or you can embed cards. We chose to embed dashboards or stories because it lets us slice and dice the data within that dashboard way easier and makes it more interactive for our users. So now what I'm going to try to focus on is, let's just focus on this, like how do we actually look at programmatic filters for our users? What do we do here? So before you even get into that, one thing you have to think about is multi-tenancy, right? So multi-tenancy is the idea that you have all of your customers hitting the same app and database or shared app and database, versus a single tenant where each customer has their own app and database. The nice part in today's cloud world, scaling up a multi-tenant application is really easy and provides lots of benefits for you. And also helps us with programmatic filtering, right? Because now we have shared database structure that we can use for filtering out specific customers. This kind of leads into programmatic filtering, right? So now for our data set, here on the left, I'm just showing you potentially like one table or one card in Domo. And we can see each patient. So each patient, Kenneth is in Baltimore, Tahe is for a Philly customer, and Dana is for Atlanta and Jared's for Atlanta. And so the idea of programmatic filtering is how can we split this data up to each of their respective customers? And so our programmatic filters are basically going to say, hey, Baltimore patients, they can only see Baltimore, or Baltimore customers can only see Baltimore patients. Philly customers can only see Philly patients, and Atlanta patients. So this is what programmatic filtering is really kind of doing under the hood. Kind of simplify it for you. Or how do you identify each customer? Do you use customer ID, customer name, customer UUID, entity ID, organization ID, right? So whatever you use, what's that unique identifier that you would want to take advantage of? Now, let's kind of jump into like, how do we actually do programmatic filtering? And one of the key steps right here is going to be actually, how are we going to get our auth token? So for us at Emocha, we're in the JavaScript world or land. And so here I'm going to actually show you, here I'm doing a post with Axios, which is the library, to the Embed auth API for Domo. And I'm going to pass in this dashboard token. And the nice part is I can actually pull this right from this Embed dashboard page, right? So this is just where I'm going to get that from. So that's the first part of this API call. The second part is we need to say, okay, what permissions are we going to make available? There's the read, where they can actually do the dashboard. There's the filter, where they can add additional filters on top of this within your dashboard, or they can potentially export the data. So we want to show an export button. And so we can either manually control that here, or we can pass them all in and then let Domo and the dashboard creator manage that through checkboxes, right? So they can allow interactions in filtering, allow export, persist filters, or whatever else they might want to do. Which is actually really nice. We actually enable all of these for all of our dashboards, so that per dashboard we can manage that through Domo. And then the last part is the actual filters, and this is the real power behind all this stuff. And this is where you're going to say, hey, how am I going to slice and dice this data so that only a specific group of people can see it? And in this example, I'm looking, hey, customer name equals emocha. But you could filter on anything, right? You could filter on name, ID, department, area, region, state. The list goes on, right? And you could also be filtering in specific user attributes if you want to, any user attributes. And the nice part about this is it actually has a lot of power, right? So there's a lot of different operators we can potentially use. We can use the in operator, right? Maybe we want to look at a bunch of different customers. Or if your customer base uses a hierarchical type of view, maybe you want to get that, your one customer or any customers within that. You can also do equals, right? Which we've already kind of shown, or been familiar with from the last slide. Also, you can do between, right? So between, or so maybe 0 or 20, and you can do age not in 1, 2, 3, 4. But the list goes on, right? There's lots of different potential operators you can use, and you can take advantage of this when you're building out how you want to do programmatic filtering. And then lastly, for us, the nice part is we filter by the logged in user, and so we can just grab the customer IDs from the current user session, and this should always be available for whatever context that person is that's logged into your system. And the nice part, this actually covers about 98% of our customers. So really only 2% of our customers require more filters on top of our dashboards after this, so which is kind of strange and kind of what we found so far. So when we do need to do more advanced filtering, we've actually built some custom filters on top of our groups. And so for instance, one thing you can do is you can say, hey, I want to create this marketing team or tech team, and I want to build out specific filters for maybe the patient monthly report dashboard, or specific filters for the CDC reporting dashboard. And we can do this easily with programmatic filters, right? So we can say, hey, this custom field or department or whatever it might be, that column should be marketing team, or that column should be tech team. So we can do that. And we've actually, within Emocha, we've actually built out UI where you can dynamically say, hey, for this dashboard, I want to be very specific and the department has to match this value, or I want to say the department has to actually match marketing. So our BI analyst can actually go through here, our BI professional, go in here and build this out for each dashboard. And that gives us a lot of power when we need to embed specific types of, or embed dashboards that are only available to certain people. And of course, the end goal for all this stuff is pulling out this auth token. And one thing you have to remember when you're doing that, make sure you're doing this for each time you embed the dashboard, each time you load the dashboard in, so we don't have expiration issues. Lastly, one thing, so I'm going to kind of focus on how do we actually embed this iframe in your page and display the dashboard or story or card to your user. And the nice part about this is it's actually really straightforward. There's not too much here, right? So all this we're doing here is this is just a bunch of HTML where we're going to say, hey, this embed URL is based on our Domo instance. So we're going to pull that from that. So for us, maybe it's like emocha.domo, whatever your URL would be. And then that end token that we've been building just goes here, right, for that specific dashboard. And then we just embed our iframe on the page. And then once we've done that, makes it available to the user and for our care team members. So what does this look like though? So we've done a lot of under the hood of how we would do it, but what does this really look like, right? So what happens is we're gonna just log into our application, log into Emocha using our existing login. We're gonna navigate to a specific analytics page. Here I'm showing you the population analytics, but you could potentially go into the patients analytics and see specific patient analytics or patient dashboards. Once you click, we're going to click a specific dashboard to load, and then since we use React, in that component, we'll make an API call to pull that token, and we'll do that through processing whatever programmatic filters we need. Once we pull that token back, we'll just use that token to actually embed that with an iframe and show the dashboard on the page. One additional thing that we have to always think about is HIPAA compliance. So how do we actually do this? And it's a surprisingly easy feat. When we're looking up our programmatic filters, this is where we can audit that. So we can say, hey, who is actually doing this? So what's the user that's currently logged in? And so I can say, okay, I'm going to log that user, the date and time, and the dashboard they're trying to view. And with a combination of all three of those, I can log that into our internal auditing system and track them. And the other thing that we do is that we limit the expert functionality. And the nice part is with Domo Everywhere, you can either limit expert functionality across the board so no one can see it through the API, or you can allow it to be managed through Domo configuration, right? So each dashboard, you can check off whether you allow that dashboard to be exported or not. Maybe you do that when you're showing PHI and don't do it when you're not showing more global analytics. And then of course, we also need to make sure we're limiting their user access, right? And so that's one thing where we can easily do by saying, hey, these roles or these permissions have access to these dashboards, these permissions don't have access to these dashboards. Now I want to kind of give you guys some takeaways, but before we get too into that, I want to come back to the screen where we have the whole view of all the different potential questions you're going to ask yourself. And I think this is what's probably most helpful for you when you're trying to figure out what you need to do or what path you want to take, right? Whether it's Domo hosted or embedded. What's that Domo instance? What features do I need to make available? If you're going to go having internal and external customers both use Domo instances, then you have to make sure that the correct features are available. If you're going to do embedded, that's not as much of a concern, right? You can think about that more for your internal customers, and for your external ones, you can handle that within you don't need to worry about that. For login, right? SSO with Google is, of course, for internal customers was super easy, but depending upon what kind of system you have internally, you might have to tweak that. Granted, there's a lot of things that are kind of plug and play, so that should be pretty straightforward. But for your paying customers, you have to always remember how are you going to handle that, whether you use SSO or another OpenID Connect, or one of the other options that are available within Domo. Then there's authorization, right? So what people can really see, what people are authorized to view, which dashboards they can see. And so if you're going the Domo hosted route, you got to remember to build out all your PDP rules, right? Personalized data permissions versus programmatic filtering custom development for embedded. And remember, when you're going the PDP route, you might potentially have to either do it through code or through manually. You have to manually duplicate some of your roles and permissions that you might already have in your application. And then also dashboard design. So the one thing you don't want to do, and the nice part about any of these scenarios, is that it won't impact how fast you can build new dashboards whatsoever. So you can still build new cards, dashboards, whatever you need really quick, and there will be no effect on that, which is great. And the kicker for us was experience, and hopefully it'll be for you too, But this is one of the reasons that Domo is so powerful for us, right? We can embed our dashboards within our application, and it becomes a cohesive application that is easy to navigate, easy to access, and is simple for our users to use. So the last big thing I want to kind of leave you with is, one is embedding your dashboard allows you to reduce administrative overhead substantially. One thing is we noticed is we don't have to duplicate any roles or permissions in Domo through PDP rules. So that was huge for us. Whether you're doing it manually or if you're doing it through code, you still have to make sure you're handling all the cases, and that's a lot of work. The other thing is that programmatic filters are really powerful, right? And auto filtering actually captures 95% of our customers. Only in specific scenarios do we actually really have to think about different user attributes for more advanced configurations. And then also experience, right? So if you're concerned about experience, this is the way to go. And this is a reason to use Domo. So you get that cohesive experience and your customers feel like they're in your application the whole time, and there's no additional training that could potentially be involved. And they don't feel like they're linking off to a different site. And that's everything. So thank you so much for attending my presentation on embedding dashboards with Domo. I hope this benefits you in your embedded or Domo journey, and looking forward to chatting it up. Thank you so much.